Daniel Harris is with us to talk to us about Man United and their game against Manchester City. Daniel, pretty effusive in your praise for just how well Manchester United were playing, particularly in that first half. Is this the turning point that they needed for everybody just to calm down about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and really get back to that situation where we were talking about last week, where he has a plan, there is an attempt to build a new team, and it's going to get there eventually?
We don't know if it's going to get there eventually, but I felt like that performance was coming in that they played really well at Norwich. They played well against Tottenham. And the turning point really wasn't so much that performance exactly. It was just having all the players back. Yes, the weekend was maybe the first time since the first game of the season or the second game of the season where he's been able to pick anything approaching his first 11, really. And this was also without Pogba. So I think that there have been signs over the last few weeks of growing understanding with the forwards and the ability to play through midfield. And I think this was the first time probably since Fergie was manager where United went and took on a good team at playing a game of football. Whereas previously they played City or Liverpool and they've tried to sit back and hit on the break. For people to say that United just countered really well in the first half isn't really true, because what they really did was they played through midfield. I think Solskjaer said it himself, whether it was 4 passes or whether it was 7 passes, they played really good attacking football, and I think that's true.
At the same time, there is kind of an element of it where they, on transition, are still a very, very impressive side, Daniel, and granted there is a bit more control around midfield. You are seeing clear improvements, I think, from certain midfield players. But is it not a case that they are still at their most dangerous form on the break while still accepting that they are getting better while controlling possession?
Yeah, I think that's true, because the strength of the team isn't the midfield. The midfield has become serviceable. McTominay's become a good midfield player, but otherwise, Fred and Lingard have assets of various descriptions, but you would want to upgrade both of them if you wanted United to be winning trophies, regular trophies again. So yeah, I mean, the strength of the team is still the pace of the attackers, but in order to get that pace from the attackers, you need the passing from midfield to be right as well. And there have been lots of other United teams who've probably been perhaps at their most dangerous on the break, but who are still able to play teams off the park playing through midfield.
Is there no possibility that Fred can do that and become that player? That actually we've seen enough improvements. I don't know, have we seen enough? I'm going to rephrase it. Have we seen enough improvement to suggest if there was more improvement at the same level that maybe he might be that good?
Maybe. I haven't exactly seen it yet. I think the problem with Fred is there are two very big problems with Fred. One of them is his right foot, which is one of the worst feet I've ever witnessed, and up there or down there with Antonio Valencia's left foot. And until you're able to regularly pass accurately off both feet to play that position that Michael Carrick did is hard, very hard. And the other thing about Fred is the carelessness. And that is probably quite a deep-seated mental thing, that he's not careful in possession. And by that, I don't mean that he should never take risks. I mean, he has an ability to botch 5 and 10 yard square passes quite regularly. And I mean, we saw that even against Tottenham. I remember I think it was a shot actually that he took that didn't even go out for a throw-in. And I'm picking one example there, but Fred is extremely careless in possession. And in order to change that, it is partly a matter of confidence, but it's partly a matter of mindset, how he approaches the game. So it's hard to see that he will become as good a player as Roy Keane and Paul Scholes and Brian Robson and Paul Ince, or even Michael Carrick and Darren Fletcher. But that's the standard that United's midfield player needs to be at. But Fred is definitely making a case for himself to at least be a very useful squad player when someone better than him arrives.
What about the front three? Are the front three getting close to a situation where you would be happy to compare them with the great front threes of the rest of Europe or Manchester United's heritage?
Not yet, but there's work to do. Daniel James, you could see more or less from minute 1, where you first watched him play for United, that he was the real deal in numerous aspects. Whether he's actually going to have the quality to go and be a regular goal scorer, a regular goal maker, a regular contributor in big games, it's very hard to say at this point. But in terms of the raw materials you would want from a player, it was very obvious very quickly that Daniel James had all of those things, and particularly had the mentality. And we saw again at the weekend that he doesn't let games pass him by. And particularly for wingers who flit in and out of games, that is a very useful quality. Anthony Martial, we all know that he is ludicrously talented. The problem with him is application and making runs that he can't necessarily be bothered to make. Is he always going to be prepared to run channels when he's not sure he's going to get the ball? We haven't seen the answer to that. But if he produces the level of performance he produced at City every week, then for sure he is a high-level player who's plenty good enough to play for Man United. But we don't know what we're going to get from him, because just quite recently he was listless at Bournemouth, where you have these matches where United maybe aren't playing well. Your centre forward should still be occupying two centre backs. They should know they're in a game when they face him. And marking Anthony Martial on a bad day seems like an absolute piece of piss, and it should never be like that for an elite level centre forward. So he should be shown that performance, and it's suggested to him in strong terms that someone will have a quiet word in his ear every time his effort levels drop below what he delivered the other day. But I've seen too much of Anthony Martial to take one performance from him and say, that is what I expect to see all the time. But that is what I would like to see all the time, for sure.
I think we're a good bit away from a conclusion on Harry Maguire at this point, Daniel. We were speaking to you about him last week, and I think the general consensus perhaps during one of United's ebbs a couple of weeks ago was that there was almost a Sanchez-esque vibe to it, that Manchester City had perhaps looked interested in the player, and then Manchester United swooped in and paid above the odds for the player. I think that opinion has been blown out of the water now. I think you can't really suggest that he's been a flop at all. It's probably somewhere in the middle at this moment, but with each passing week you're seeing now that perhaps Manchester City might have actually missed out on the guy, especially with their performances at central defence, because he's starting to look the part at Man United.
Yeah, he's been okay, Maguire. I'd say that he's probably been better than what there was before. There's a problem with his partnership with Lindelof because they're quite similar players, and actually I haven't seen enough of Axel Tuanzebe to know whether he's of the required quality. But he's definitely a better profile to partner Maguire than Lindelof, who's not been good at all this season, but has been really good this week. The thing about Maguire is that for £80 million, you should be getting one of the best defenders in the world, who you would really expect to take a couple of weeks to settle, but a couple of weeks or a month, not settle until now. And what we haven't seen from Maguire is that kind of one-man wall that you would expect. So I hoped that United were basically getting Steve Bruce with the first touch, someone who would get in the way of everything, but would also organise everyone else. And those games where you're under the pump with 10 minutes to go, it would be his face or his shoulder or his ear or his arse that blocked everything. And I haven't seen performances like that from Maguire. And the truth is, I didn't really see a performance like that from Maguire on Saturday either. The person who I felt came closest to delivering that performance was Wan-Bissaka, who was excellent. But he was good against Tottenham, although I thought Lindelof was better against Tottenham, and he was good at the weekend. And ultimately, playing Manchester City for 90 minutes and conceding one goal from a set piece is not a bad reflection of how well the defence has played. But I do think that in order for Maguire to be worth not just the money, but to be worth the opportunity cost of not spending that money on someone else, there is still a level of performance to which he needs to ascend. But yeah, I thought he was good at the weekend.
Yeah, the trouble with the opportunity cost is you never actually get that back. On what needs to happen now for the rest of the season, like we were talking with Kenny Cunningham before you came on air, and he made the point that Woodward had essentially made his bed with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when he did that round of interviews recently. You know, he said that they were committed to him. Frequently, people in his position have made that, and then when a better option comes along, they've changed their minds. But it would have been another embarrassing climb down if they were to sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in the middle of the season, having gone so publicly in his favour. What needs to happen between now and the end of the season, so at the end of the season they don't decide, well, actually there are better options out there?
I think now, unless there's a disaster, he's safe. I think the main thing that needs to happen, and what people haven't perhaps credited too much, has been the United have never been as bad as they've looked on certain occasions, because the main thing that really needs to happen is the players need to stay fit. Because when United have had most of their players available, they have generally delivered fair performances. And the reason why things have improved now isn't that suddenly the penny has dropped with Solskjaer's tactics, or suddenly they understand his tactics, or he's changed his tactics. It's that McTominay's fit and Martial's fit. And the way that United want to play is very difficult and almost impossible without those two players, because Martial is the person who can hold the ball up front, who allows Rashford to play on the left, who gives you different options in the way that you want to build attacks when he can be bothered. And McTominay is the only midfielder United have who can get box to box, who can deliver a level of performance, a consistent level of performance, who can put himself in the way of things at the back, but also can inject some drive going forward. And without those two players, it's going to be mix and match. And that's the bed that Woodward has made, into which Solskjaer has basically had to lie, is that there wasn't enough money made available to strengthen the team in the way the team needed to be strengthened. But in terms of what they can actually do footballistically, as Arsene Wenger would say, to make things better, is they just need to keep doing what they're doing. They need to keep playing with requisite energy and effort and intelligence. And we've seen that they're able to do that, because they played Spurs off the pitch the other night, and for half an hour they gave the best display of the Fergie era, of the post-Fergie era by far. So we've seen that they can do it. I think with young players still, and some of them are still quite young, you will get some inconsistencies. But at least now they know what a proper performance looks like and what they have to do in order to deliver that proper performance. And if the players stay fit, there's no reason to think that they won't be able to carry on doing it, except I would say one caveat is that against City, after half an hour when they went 2-0 up, they started sitting slightly deeper. And I was actually pleased as a United supporter, really, to hear Solskjaer say subsequently that this was a mistake that they'd made, that he'd noticed, because there has been a tendency with Solskjaer and to take, not necessarily, I guess we could call it a negative option. When United are leading, when they scored the third goal against Sheffield United, for example, if United had carried on playing, it looked much more like they were going to win that game 4 or 5-2 than they were going to draw or lose the game. But as soon as United went 3-2 up, him and Phelan had a conflab about who they should bring on, which defensive-minded player they should bring on. And the defence is not good enough to see away 1-goal leads defending for 15 minutes, where the other team is able to get up ahead, able to work up some pressure and work up ahead of steam. So what they need to do is they need to stay confident and brave in the way that they play in minute 1, is the way that they should be playing in minute 80 as well, even if they've got a 1-goal lead, because the team strength is going forward. And if you're playing against Manchester United, what you don't want is you don't want their attackers on the ball. You'd be much happier if their defenders are sitting back, if they're just booting it away and then sitting back and giving you the opportunity to build another attack. So I was pleased to note that that is not something that Solskjaer necessarily wants them to do, but they need to realise that, and he also needs to realise that when they've got a 1-goal lead, they're still better off most of the time looking for another goal, because the attackers are better than the defenders.
Daniel, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
All right, see you again, chaps.